I'm calling this meeting to order. This is a regular business meeting of the Redmond City Council held on Tuesday, July 21st, 2026, commencing at 7 o'clock p.m. I will call roll, starting with Council President Stewart.
Here.
Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Here.
Councilmember Forsyth.
Here.
Councilmember Procria.
Here.
Councilmember Percy.
Here.
Councilmember Sony.
Here.
And Councilmember Kritzer.
Here.
The first item on our agenda is a presentation from Cascade Water Alliance. I would love to invite the CEO, John Taylor, up to the podium to share
Good evening.
about Cascade. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm John Taylor. I'm the newly minted Chief Executive Officer of the Cascade Water Alliance. I think I'm on week 7, and it is an honor to be here giving you all this presentation. We're going to cover a couple of things tonight. The first is going to be just a quick overview of the Cascade Supply Program, which is our audacious program to connect the Tacoma water supply with the water supply down here in King County, or rather up here, I should say. And then my colleague, Andrew Baker, is going to be giving an overview of our budget and rate proposal for the upcoming biennium. And so with that, oh, there's the agenda right there. So I'll go to the next one. So just to ground people into Cascade Water Alliance, we are a wholesale purveyor of water to 5 jurisdictions and 2 water districts here in King County, serving about 400,000 residents to 380,000 employees. And we currently are purchasing water from Seattle, have been for many, many years. We own Lake Tapps. So the next time you're out on Lake Tapps, you're riding around on Cascade Alliance water. And we now have a contract with Tacoma starting in 2041, and we will be transporting water from Tacoma into this region and using that as water supply for many of the people in our service area. And that's critical because it guarantees this region long-term water security, and it gives us a duplicity of sources for water here in King County that heretofore we have not had. And that regional connection is going to create not only water resilience, but climate resilience, and resilience in the event of something really unforeseen happened with water supply in this region. For example, an earthquake, which is something that I think everyone here keeps in mind as we live in this region. So the Cascade Supply Program, I'm just going to provide a very quick overview. This is a really ambitious program, but basically it rolls out in 3 phases. And the first phase is this green section on the map, which is the connecting with Tacoma's Pipeline 5. That is the southern boundary of that green segment. And you'll note there is no route on that map yet. That's how early we are in planning for this. So ultimately, we will determine a route, and we'll run it north up to the other yellow line you see up there, which is the Bellevue-Issaquah pipeline, and connect with that so that we can bring it into our service area. That's about 17, 19 miles of area that we have to traverse through a lot of jurisdictions and some water bodies. So it's going to be a complicated project, but one that we feel very confident that we can deliver. The second phase is going to be building out the infrastructure in the area that we serve once that pipeline gets here so that we can deliver to all of our members. And then the last phase is connecting all of that with Lake Tapps and building a treatment facility at Lake Tapps. When you look at that map, you're looking at 40 years of investment in the region. So this isn't a short-term vision. This is a very long-term vision to create a lot more resilience within the region. This is not an inexpensive project. So it's about somewhere between $1.1 and $1.3 billion. We feel like the cost estimates we have at our disposal right now are much more refined than earlier cost estimates. With that said, this sort of Doppler diagram that you see up there gives you a sense for the level of surety you have when you're this early in a project. But we feel like we've done a lot of risk analysis. We've really thought through what the components of this project are. And while we can't say that these cost estimates are the last cost estimates you're ever going to see, we feel pretty confident in them for this level of planning and development. And we've built the uncertainty of this into our funding plan, which Andy is going to talk about in much more detail. So I'm going to turn it over to Andy.
All right. Thank you, John. So, yes, my name is Andy Baker. I'm Cascade's economist, which means I'm responsible for our rates and charges, our long-term financial planning, and our demand forecasting. John just described the scale of this undertaking. It is a very significant project with a number of planning, engineering challenges, and a program of this scope needs a financial strategy for that's tailored specifically to it. And so this capital funding plan that I'm going to tell you about is the financial roadmap for how Cascade is planning for the phase one of the CSP, so the time frame, the first piece of that three-phase program. Fortunately, we're building from a strong foundation. We have a robust set of fiscal policies already in place, a stable financial track record. So this plan is how we go about building on that foundation. What it includes is identifying and evaluating all the potential funding sources that may be available to us so it can define a strategy for how we plan to pursue that funding. It evaluates the rates, the potential other financial impacts, and aligns those with our fiscal policies. The uncertainty that John described, both in cost as well as in schedule and what will growth rates and inflation and interest rates be over the course of this, is a key piece of developing a plan. And so it lays out a framework for quantifying and understanding that uncertainty to help us make decisions before we know all the answers, because we cannot know all the answers until we get into it. To tackle that uncertainty, we've built a comprehensive sensitivity analysis. We looked at a very broad range of cost, even more broad than just the numbers that John mentioned, looking at even what happens if costs on this double over the level that was shown. In addition, so as I said, schedule, funding alternatives, including outside funding sources. A project like this has regional benefit, addresses major factors like climate resiliency that are regionally important beyond just Cascade's members. And so we are looking for funding beyond just the ratepayers of Cascade. And to do this, so we built these scenarios using our long-term financial model and tested what level of rates is going to be necessary to meet our fiscal policies, our obligations. This chart shows the average projected cost per CCF. I apologize for the acronyms. A CCF is 100 cubic feet of water, about 750 gallons of water. I'm showing it this way rather than just percentage rate impacts, because when we're looking out over a 15-year time horizon, cumulative percentages are hard to digest, and we want to be transparent about what it's going to take to, in terms of rates, to deliver a program of this import. So these aren't the yearly increases, but the total amount per CCF in each year. For mental math, a typical household uses between 5 and 8 CCF per month. The dotted gray line along the bottom is inflation. The other gray lines above that are that sensitivity scenarios that we ran. And the green line shown there is our recommended funding strategy through there. So the key things to take away from this are, first, we're looking at significant increases, and we want to be clear. These are well above inflation, even in the most optimistic of the scenarios that we evaluated. I note this for two reasons. First, again, to be transparent about what it takes to deliver this, but also to be clear that there's no scenario where our near-term recommendations are going to overshoot the long-term need. Second, a key finding from our analysis is that deferring rate increases in the short term increases where they need to go in the long term, because it leads to much more debt financing. This slide summarizes the strategy from an annualized rate percent increase standpoint. So in the near term, there's a broad range of cost of what would meet our immediate needs, depending on what happens with some factors that are in our control, many factors that are outside of our control. Over the long term, though, there's a much tighter band of where we need to go on an annualized basis. Our recommended funding strategy sets us on a moderately conservative course. It isn't a path that is high enough to cover every potential outcome, but it sets us up to have flexibility to take advantage of opportunities and respond to risks without being purely reactive. I'm going to transition into our nearer term budget. So we've used our funding plan to inform and develop our biennial budget proposals. This chart presents our proposed 27 to 32 capital budget. It's grouped by program area. We have three major program areas. The largest one, shown in green, is our Cascade Supply Program. We do also have some non-Cascade Supply Program projects, maintaining the existing infrastructure that we have, and also the capital payments to Tacoma that are paying for our share of capacity that we're purchasing from them. As you can see, the CSP is the significant focus, and there are a couple key points I want to flag on here. In 2029, you can see that the costs step up. That's when we're going to be getting into design of the program. And then again, in 2032, there's another big increase, and that's when we currently plan getting into construction. This is our operating budget. So this slide shows the 2027 proposed operating budget and revenues to pay for it. Purchased water makes up almost half of our operating budget. Of that, 98% is our payments to Seattle for our current water supply. Debt service is our next biggest component, and this shows assuming a 2026 bond that would be in support of that capital program. Operations is our next biggest portion, the cost of operating our existing infrastructure, as well as our planning and engineering functions, as well as administrative budget, overhead functions, that sort of thing, as well as our conservation program. On the right-hand side is how we pay for all of that. Cascade establishes charges for its members made up of a few different components to ensure that our costs are equitably recovered from each of our 7 members. Our administrative dues are capped at 9% of the total, and with our conservation charges, they're allocated out to each of our members based on their share of equivalent residential units, which is essentially a way to measure the total customer size. So each member pays proportionally based on that. Our demand share charges make up the majority of our revenue. That's the large blue slice of the pie, and they're allocated out based on actual water demands for each of our members. So the actual amount that is used goes into informing the share of the pie that each of our members has. The last charge area, the purple on here, is our regional capital facilities charge. And this is a mechanism that is a pass-through connection charge on new development based on a proportional share of existing and future infrastructure. The recommended funding strategy that I mentioned has 9.5% rate increases in 2027 and 2028, and the slide shows where those go. The main driver of the rates is new debt service, paying for the Cascade Supply Program through a new bond issuance. The impact of this is front-loaded a little bit in 27, and then in 2028, a portion of the rate increase will go towards rate smoothing out future rate increases beyond just this biennium. I mentioned earlier that percentages don't always do a good job of conveying what all this means in terms of the cost of water, and so this slide is an attempt to show the same information, but it presented it a different way. So near term, 27 and 28, average cost of water on a per 100 cubic feet basis. So as I said, a typical household uses between 5 and 8 CCF per month. The proposed rate increase translates to 33 cents per CCF in 2027, more than the current level in 2026, and then in 2028, an additional 35 cents per CCF, so a total of 68 cents per CCF more than the current level. I mentioned the regional capital facilities charges. These are those upfront connection charges on growth, and they pay for the capital assets necessary to secure water supply, both now and what will be needed to deliver it in the future to meet that growth. So based on our capital program, these are proposed to increase significantly, which meets one of our code requirements for reflecting that cost of both existing and future. We aren't proposing to increase them to the full calculated amount in 2027. Rather, we've phased that in over the next few years. We're looking to smooth out the impact while still ensuring equitable cost recovery. And then lastly, I will just leave you with a little bit of a look ahead, because as John mentioned, this is a very long-term program. In September, we're going to be bringing our budget package to our board for adoption. We anticipate that we will be then in 2028, with our next biennial budget cycle, doing an update to our capital funding plan, because our intention is that that will be a flexible tool rather than just a report that's on the shelf. There will be things that change even more frequently than that. We don't know everything that is going to change in the underlying assumptions that we have so far. There are a couple key milestones where we are pretty confident that we need to do major updates to that funding plan and the strategy that goes along with it. The first of those is in the 2030 timeframe, and that is when we will have reached our first design milestone, which is the trigger for getting a major cost estimate update. That's going to let us reduce the amount of uncertainty that we have in the costs and be able to refresh that strategy that we have in light of that improved uncertainty. That is also the trigger for being able to apply for an major potential source of outside funding assistance, which is WIFIA on here. Again, I apologize for the acronyms. That is Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act funding. That's one of the key funding sources that we've identified in the funding plan, and we will know whether we're able to get that not for about 4 years. So that's going to be a key trigger to updating our funding plan depending on the outcome of that pursuit. Then looking a little bit further out in 2032, when we get our construction bids, it's going to be the next point where cost and schedule uncertainty really gets reduced, and so that's going to trigger another major update. So it's a long process yet to come, but I'd also like to take the opportunity to acknowledge that we've already gone through a lot just to get to this point. What you've heard today is the result of a significant amount of engagement from our board members as well as staff at all of our member agencies, particularly here at Redmond, and we very much appreciate the time, expertise, and insight that they've contributed, and we look forward to the ongoing partnership with them as we go through this. Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much, and thank you to the staff of Cascade who are here as well. I would love to open it up for questions from the council, and I also want to acknowledge that I currently am the board chair of Cascade, and Council Vice President Nueva Camina also sits on the board as well, and really appreciate her work on all of these parts as well. So if you don't get all your questions in today, she and I can also answer council questions as well, but we'd love to open it up for the council. Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. This question might actually be for our board members. What work are we doing to inform multifamily complexes of these cost impacts coming and eventually being passed through to the users who actually pay into not an individual bill, but a one collective bill? So how are we communicating that with those folks?
And I hate to do this, but I may have to defer to city staff on this simply because the 9.5% rate increase isn't a rate increase, a 9.5% rate increase on the end users. It's embedded in the charges for the city, and so it's a portion of your rate, but your rate increase may not be 9.5%. It may be less than that or more than that.
And I do know that Director Cochran is working on our utility rates right now, but that is accurate. It's not a straight 9.5%. Currently, we get about 60% of our water from Cascade or so. And so embedded in that is how we do the calculations for water. So more to come on that. It's a good question, though.
Yeah, I would just also add that as the wholesaler, we don't directly communicate individually to any of your customers, but given that we recognize the impact in both what we are doing and the value that is going to bring, we are committed to providing information for your utility staff, customer service staff, so that when people have questions that they'll be able to have information about either that they could answer directly or that they could direct to us.
And just another friendly amendment, which is Andy and I met at the Utility Rates Summit last year because we're part of a larger regional dialogue about the cumulative impact of rates. We understand that rates across the board are going up, and it has a collective impact on families in King County, and particularly residents who are low income.
Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer, then Councilmember Soni.
Yeah, thank you so much, and congratulations on the new role, Mr. Taylor. Good to have you in this, bringing your expertise. Really appreciate the presentation. To reflect what you just said, I am hearing a lot from our residents about the impacts of rising rates on all kinds of pieces of cost of living, but especially in utilities. So just hearing about these projected increases is definitely concerning. You mentioned some of the potential variability of factors of what might lead to different scenarios of cost, but that you're projecting the percentage increase. At what point would you come back to revise? Can you clarify that?
Yeah. So we, as part of our biennial budget process, we're going to be doing a full look at all of this. In addition to that, the first date where we would anticipate doing something more frequently than on a biennial basis would be when we get that it's roughly 10% design and an updated cost estimate associated with that in the 2030 timeframe. But we are happy to come and talk to you as part of your, on a biennial basis about where things are. Hopefully the next time I'm talking to you, it is saying, yes, we are in line with where we thought it was 2 years ago, because we don't expect to really have major differences sooner than really to that 2030 timeframe.
Thank you.
Councilmember Soni?
Thank you so much. So as we are moving towards Tacoma Water and eventually towards Lake Tap, my question is actually on the water itself. What will be the difference in terms of the chemistry, the pH balance for water? And Redmond is also using a lot of our groundwater wells. So what would be the blending compatibility there? So, we don't want our residents to not
You
use
see us
the
looking
water.
at one another to figure out who's qualified. To be candid, it would be very difficult for me to answer that question in any meaningful way.
Yeah, I'll give a very brief answer and then commit to getting some follow-up information that can be distributed. We have done a blending study with the Seattle water and Tacoma water and confirmed that those are compatible sources. And I think that's as much as I feel qualified to say.
Brian, do you have more to add? Do you want to, you're squirming in your seat, so would you want to introduce yourself and then you can share a little more?
So I'm Brian Bartle. I'm the Cascade Supply Program Executive. So we have done a full blending study, a desktop study. We haven't actually mixed the waters yet. The Tacoma water and the Seattle water were compared out of all 3 plants. So Seattle has 2 plants, Tacoma has 1. It's the first time blending study has ever been done across the region for all 3 of those plants. And of the about 35 constituents that are in water, Tacoma's water was better in, I think it was maybe 19 or 20-ish of them, equal in about 5. And then there's, I think, 1 constituent that Tacoma water is a little bit worse on. But Tacoma's actually working on a project to replace and fix some of the issues that are coming from that. So in general, you'll find the water will be the same or better.
Great question. Thank you. And thank you, Brian.
Nice work.
Other questions for our team? Councilmember Prakria?
Thank you so much for the presentation. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more as to the methodology behind the rate increases for the capital facilities charges, the regional capital facilities charges compared to the demand share charges. I'm just looking at the forecast between 26 and 29 and seeing a sharp increase, a 66% increase. And I see the formula used there, but I was wondering if you could just speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, I can. I love to talk about these. Thank you. So the difference between the smoothed increases that we have for our demand shares, so our proposal is one that levels out the overall rates over the long term and is relatively steady increases in each of the forecasted years, versus the regional capital facilities charges, which are going up at a steeper rate, is because of some requirements that are both in our code and requirements that are embedded in the foundational documents of Cascade that require us to have a calculation of the regional capital facilities charge with a pretty specific level. And so we have only a limited amount of ability to smooth those out. Smoothing it out over a longer term isn't provided for in our code. But the driver of that increase is the overall cost of the project. And so if we had the flexibility to delay those increases and smooth them out over a longer term, it would mean shifting and requiring increased cost in the demand charges. I hope that addressed your question. I'd be happy to elaborate more, but I want to be respectful.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions this evening? Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Thank you, Mayor. And John, welcome to Redmond City Hall. So wonderful to have you and the team here. The question that I had, I thought that perhaps one of my colleagues would ask, but I know that the question is out there, especially for our ratepayers. And that is, can you speak to what was the alternative? If we didn't build Cascade Supply Program, we didn't have this very ambitious project, what was the alternative?
Thanks for asking that question. So the alternative, there really isn't an alternative. There was a competitive process several years ago now. The mayor was part of that. I was not here for that. But I'm just reflecting what I've heard from others, between Tacoma and Seattle. And I think that really what it came down to was the amount of surety that Tacoma was willing to give Cascade in terms of access to water over the long haul. Seattle was much more conservative than Tacoma in what they were willing to give this region access to. And when you think about this county, and when you think about where the growth is occurring, the lion's share of the growth, new housing, new businesses, it's happening on this side of the lake. And if we're going to sort of sustain this region, you're going to need to have access to water over the long haul, which was something that wasn't available from the other proposal. So the challenge with this is we have to build this pipeline to access that water. But even with the cost of building the pipeline, this is a much better deal over the long haul for the residents of the region. For those who don't know me, I've been in this council chamber before for such fun events as I think the Gate on 172nd. That was a fun meeting. And I was the director of the Department of Natural Resources and Parks for a number of years. No stranger to high rate increases, but I think the difference between those rate increases and this rate increase is the value proposition of what you get for this 9.5%. For 9.5%, you get access to high quality water almost in perpetuity. And I just, based on what's going on outside today, I would suspect over the next 60 years, we're going to really want access to water and want it in a consistent way. So that's sort of the way I view this when I think about this capital project. It was a better deal on the numbers, but it's also just a better deal philosophically. It builds much more resilience into the region.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. I see Council Member Forsyth has another question.
I do. The conversation spurred another question for me. Given the span of this pipeline, and we're going to be going across several other jurisdictions, is there room in the growth to invite other communities into the alliance?
And I'm, again, newcomer, not an expert on the limitations on us to offer water to other people, but there are limitations on us offering water to other people. But we are going to design the pipeline with emergency access points for jurisdictions if in an emergency they wanted access. Did I get that right, Brian? Okay.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions. I want to thank both of you, Brian, the entire team that's here. Wave, everybody. Hey. Thank you so much for bringing this presentation to us, sharing it with the council and the community, this really important investment that we're making to ensure that we have clean drinking water for an extremely long period of time. And I do appreciate all the talent that you bring to the table to ensure that this project moves forward in an efficient manner. So thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda, and I'm going to go down there in just a moment, is the presentation of the Puget Sound Regional Council's Vision 2050 Award by Executive Director Josh Brown.
Thank you, Mayor Bernie and members of the Redmond City Council. It's nice to see you again. I'm Josh Brown, Executive Director of the Puget Sound Regional Council. I think I'm here once a year presenting an award to all of you for the fantastic work that you do. I'm here today presenting a Vision 2050 Award in appreciation and recognition of the reciting of one of Plymouth Housing supportive housing development projects here in Redmond. I know members of the city council, mayor, members of the public have followed, this project. First, I wanted to share a little bit about our Vision 2050 Awards. Our Vision 2050 Awards are really about recognizing, taking our regional plans that we develop at PSRC and putting them into action. And of course, as the previous discussion highlighted, affordability is one of the paramount concerns of our region's residents. And of course, right up there is housing affordability throughout the region. This project's quite incredible. It's a 6-story building with 100 permanent supportive housing units for individuals earning less than 30% of the area median income. That's about $28,000 annually, and will provide residents with on-site services to help ensure that they have the stability that they need in their lives to be able to function and be able to thrive. And of course, this was a project where it had been slated for another community. The political wind shifted, and there wasn't the ability to be able to see that project through in a neighboring community. And the city of Redmond stepped up, Mayor Bernie, your amazing leadership, to welcome and make this project a reality. So I can't thank you enough for your leadership. We know we need more housing of all types at all affordability levels. That's easier said than done, but in your community, you're making it happen. Congratulations.
I have a few words to say, and then I'll accept the award, but I do want to get a picture with all of the council and Director Helland as well, because she was part of this. This new development by Plymouth meets a critical community need, as Josh mentioned, and demonstrates Redmond's leadership in addressing housing and homelessness in alignment with Vision 2050 and the Redmond 2050 Comprehensive Plan. Redmond's effort will result in 100 units of permanent supportive housing and reflect our commitment to regional partnership and equity. Redmond could not have done this alone. We want to especially recognize a regional coalition for housing and the Plymouth Project team for their ability to quickly pivot and keep this project moving forward. It has an interesting history. For those that are interested can look back on it. This was a project that could have not happened, and I so appreciate not just the support of the staff in getting this done, but also the support of the council and the community in ensuring that these individuals will have a home. I also want to recognize the project was made possible through funding from Amazon, a regional coalition for housing, member jurisdictions, the Balmer Group, City of Redmond, Enterprise, Gates Foundation, Heritage Bank, King County Housing Authority, Microsoft, Washington State Department of Commerce, Washington State Housing Finance Commission, and many anonymous donors. And finally, I want to recognize our Planning and Community Development Director, Carol Helland, whose leadership, creativity, and determination helped us move quickly when this opportunity arose. So thank you so much for joining us and giving the city this award. I am very, very proud to accept it on behalf of the city and look forward to having you join us when we open those doors and welcome our new community members. So thank you.
Fantastic. Congratulations, Mayor.
Yeah. Do you want to get over, where do you want the picture? We'll do one, let's do one here.
Sure.
And then we'll bring everyone. Why don't you come over here?
This is always the trickiest part, taking pictures.
Great. Come on over here. And Director Helland, let's just do it over here because then we have stairs.
Hey, nice to see you. Yeah, absolutely.
It means a lot.
Come on, everyone.
Come on
Don't
over
be
here.
shy.
Come on.
Congrats. Congrats, everyone. Congrats.
Thank you. You want to go a couple up top too? Yeah, let's fill in a couple up top.
Hello.
Squeeze this all in. Come on up.
This is always the trickiest part, orchestrating the photos.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give you the bunny ears
so.
back here.
We threatened to do it for our council.
That way just a little bit because I'm up against the wall. Go that way just a slightly.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. The mayor's. No, yeah, there we go. Yeah, just to be tall.
Now I'm too tall.
Never
You're the right height. All right, fantastic. Congrats, everyone.
Congrats.
Absolutely. You too. Have a good rest of your meeting. You're welcome. Thank you, John. I'll see you Thursday. Sounds great.
The next item on the agenda is items from the audience. I have the sign-in sheet for members of the public to speak tonight. When I read your name, you will come up to the podium and have 3 minutes to address the council. Council members generally will not respond to comments or questions directly at the meeting. Members of the public are welcome to email the council anytime at mayorcouncil@redmond.gov. The views stated by members of the public do not represent the opinion of the City of Redmond, and as a reminder, RCW 29B 45010 prohibits any public comment during the council meeting in support or opposition of ballot propositions, measures, or candidates. All comments must pertain to the City of Redmond business as indicated on the sign-in sheet. If you are speaking on the interim official control regulating commercial drone land uses, you will need to speak during the public hearing portion of the meeting tonight. There are 8 people signed up to speak tonight, and no one has signed up to speak remotely. So I usually call up like 4 names in a row, so you know when you're coming up next. Antje Illefeld, then Catherine Moya, then Max Ruhlman, and then Wolf Adriatico. And Antje, I'm sorry if I totally messed up your last name. I
You're
apologize.
an excellent company. My name is Antje Ilefeld. I'm a resident of Education Hill, and I speak on behalf of the Marquest Neighborhood Association about a fixable gap in tree code enforcement on weekends. So we have run into these issues, and I would like to speak to you about concerns with bad actors in the city. The specific gap is that the code enforcement is unavailable on weekends, and this creates a 48-hour window every week where violations go unchecked. Now, what does this look like? We have a regional pattern not just in Redmond, but also in our neighborhood communities in Bellevue and other East Side cities, where we've had extensive canopy loss from aggressive tree removal during housing development. And those neighboring communities have already acted on these problems. Redmond hasn't. Unchecked tree removal obviously changes the character of the neighborhood. You might have your own political views on the political impact and the climate change, but it also has practical implications because trees are connected through a root system, and removing them unchecked creates instability of other trees in the neighborhood. So it has a cascading effect where neighbors will then have problems because their trees are tilting, and they will have to cut down previously healthy trees in their wind tunnels, especially with increasing storms in the neighborhood that also further bring down healthy trees. So I think we probably agree that unchecked tree removal is a bad thing, and we should live by the Redmond City Code that already exists. Now, Bellevue had seen the same problem, adopted an interim tree protection in 2024, specifically because of canopy loss tied to abuse of removal pathways. Kirkland's Tree and Urban City Forestry Program signals the same trajectory on their website. The Seattle SDCI has a centralized tree code enforcement. The citizen commentary that you can find on the City of Redmond's own website talks about how tree loss is severely changing the character of Redmond. So Redmond recently ran a tree code update community engagement, which I personally attended along with another member of the Marquest Neighborhood Association, and that group referred us to you, City Council, to surface this gap in the current approach with respect to bad actors. So what we're asking you to consider are 2 choices. One is have an on-call on weekends, so that if a member of the public calls the police to alert the police or some official about the fact that some trees are seemingly unchecked cut down, there is somebody that the police can turn to, or disallow tree removal on weekends. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Catherine Moya, and then Max Ruhlman, Wolf Adriatico, then Aaron Hamilton.
Hi, I'm short. Hopefully you can mostly see me. My name is Catherine Moya, and I'm a neighbor of Antje's up on Education Hill in the Marquest development. I live there with my husband. So kind of the personal story was this. On October 20th, 2025, our neighbor up there began cutting down a lot of trees. Like we started calling it the tree massacre. They were just going down all over the place, and we thought there's no way this could be permitted. So my husband called the police and said, can you get someone here to stop them? And they said, well, we don't have any tree enforcement on the weekends. And he said, well, can you at least come and, kind of document this? And they said, no, there's really nothing we can do. You can call back Monday. And he said, by Monday, the trees will be gone. And they were. And there were a lot of trees. And it's interesting because then on November 14th, 2025, they did a survey, the required arborist report, to be able to subdivide that lot. But of course, when they did the arborist report, all those other canopy trees were gone. You could even see one in the picture. It was rather odd. The assessment was just done on the trees that were there, not that was previously there. It's changed the baseline, as Antje was saying. It's changed the minute ecosystem there, and there's really no way to put it back. Even if the permitting process for their land use action goes forward and says, okay, you have to go and replant some trees, it's not going to be the big trees that were cut down. So, we are a tree city. We want to protect the canopy, and it's not just weekends. We have long days in summer. If people wanted to work at night and, cut some things down at twilight, get rid of them, if there's nothing there to stop them, then there's nothing there to stop them. So, as Antje said, having some way to address this we feel is important so that it's not just a tree city in name, but we're really doing things to help make it so that people just aren't going to go that direction. So on behalf of myself and our Marcrest neighbors, thank you for your time.
Next is Max Ruhlman, then Rolf Adriatico, then Aaron Hamilton, then Garrett Wilkes.
Good evening. I'm here today about the OFH and the role that that community has played in free speech and expression, being a place that's home to artists and punk, country, rap, and other musicians. We were fully enveloped in a world of free and open expression. The city can learn a lot from the OFH community about what free speech can offer, especially in difficult times. As you look at the item on the agenda today concerning signage, please consider this. Protection of free speech and artistic expression is just one part of the role of government. I understand the desire to consolidate spaces for expression, such as the creation of spaces like the graffiti wall at the skate park and the old firehouse for teens. I do not think that passing restrictive regulations on signage will positively impact free speech and will probably have a negligible effect on public safety. There's a need for posters to be visible for spreading awareness, even outside of government channels. Visibility is the purpose of signs, and the events that rely on signs for awareness are able to succeed through the merits of that specific form of messaging. Public forums owned by the government are meant for the people. Businesses are private and can afford to go through the permits process and spend the time to go through those official channels, whereas individuals often lack the time and resources to obtain those permits. It should be noted that individuals and small groups are the ones that are disadvantaged by regulations on signage. Compliance with the Supreme Court must contend with local government obligations to represent and protect its citizens. A vibrant community necessitates open and varied forms of expression, not just expression that you agree with or that you think looks nice. In my view, government should protect its citizens and not limit their avenues for expression. And it's great to be back, and good to see you all again. Have a good evening.
Next is Wolf Adriatico, then Aaron Hamilton, then Garrett Wilkes, then Prav Iyengar.
Item number 26114 on the consent agenda tonight is being presented under a smokescreen of Supreme Court compliance, but rather took these cases as a signal to toe the constitutional First Amendment line. By specifying exemptions and prohibitions in this ordinance, it contrarily applies content-based filters beyond scope of Austin v. Reagan National Advertising LLC, one of the cited Supreme Court cases, which by precedent reasoned, quote, a speech regulation targeted at specific subject matter is content-based even if it does not discriminate among viewpoints within that subject matter. For example, Banning the use of sound trucks for political speech, and only political speech, would be a content-based regulation, even if it imposed no limits on the political viewpoints that could be expressed, end quote. As local legislators, you define the tone of this city through restriction and permission. When ordinances impose heavy-handed trampling of core American rights, legal to apply they may be, you send a message to the people that our voices are not wanted, that you want to tuck our voices into corners nobody will see so your image stays clean, modern, slick, and by doing so, alienate alternative communities, stifle anyone bold enough to go against the grain, and drive them all underground, where their disdain and disapproval festers because you didn't feel like having a conversation with your constituents. The Supreme Court advises an abundance of caution when applying any kind of speech restriction, as it must be, quote, narrowly tailored to serve a significant government interest, end quote. I ask, what is the significant interest you're addressing with these strict prohibitions? Thank you.
Next is Aaron Hamilton, then Garrett Wilkes, then Prav Iyengar, and then David Morton.
Hello, going off script, so a blanket apologies in advance. I wanted to make a comment regarding the survey that was presented last week on the slide deck that they did regarding safety. The clock didn't start, so now it is. Okay. Regarding safety, I was a little disheartened of how dismissive the person was for the bottom 1% of residents that feel very unsafe in the city. I have not been, as you know, I've been very vocal about how I've been feeling safety-wise in the city as a trans woman and provided the receipts for that. And to have somebody present this information and just kind of brush it off to the side is disingenuous. But I do appreciate the council members that did attempt to push back a little bit on that. Even with the 1%, it's still a large amount of people. But, if you look at the rest of the 92%, and if you look at the breakdown of the data, when you have 50% of your population as white and 49% of your population as male, it's not surprised that the vast majority say that they feel safe in this city. So to not have that more granular information of who are these 1%, I would probably say it's probably the LGBTQ plus community, the Hispanic community, these marginalized communities that feel very unsafe. So it hurt a lot to hear that. And, I would really like to take her or them on a walking tour, and I can show her every location that I've been assaulted or harassed or humiliated or verbally attacked. And it's everywhere. It's out in public. And for that part of the city to just be like, we don't care about you because 92% of the people feel safe, it makes me mad. Because I don't feel safe and I don't feel like the city is really doing anything about it. I'm not the only one. Clearly, there's 9% people that feel the same way, which, drives, with my last previous public comment where I, once again, told you all about how I feel unsafe here. There was a member at, believe it or not, the gun club who searched me out on LinkedIn and asked me if she wanted to help me feel more safe. And that drove me to, all right, she gave me basic lessons of guns and how to shoot. So my unsafety is pushing me to a direction that I don't necessarily want to go into. And now I'm thinking about, do I need to own a gun now so I can be safe? And that's scary. So, in conclusion, I hope that you can take that under consideration. Thank you.
Next is Garrett Wilkes, then Prav Iyengar, and then David Morton.
Hello, City Council. I'm Garrett Wilkes. I am a pediatric speech therapist here in Redmond. I am in close contact with families of marginalized communities, my neighbors, my friends, and the people I work with, my patients and their families. I am coming to you talking about the flock safety camera situation, understanding that this has been an ongoing development for the past year. Just kind of giving you my update on the current feelings and thoughts of the people that I am with, that are in my circles. There is still a very high level of distrust with these cameras. There's still a very high level of fear of their misuse and their abuse. There's still with any story that comes out about how they might be used by other branches of government and how they could be impacting their families. It can spark some really difficult conversations about what the city of Redmond is doing about that. And yeah, I wanted to come forward with you about that sort of information and about how that has been developing. And I come to you also understanding the sides of the conversation here. Is my understanding that it is something that is just, the cost is too great and the benefits are too negligible for it to be worth it. So yeah, thank you for your time. Bye.
Next is Prav Iyengar. I apologize if I said your name poorly. And then David Morton.
Mayor and members of the council, my name is Drew Iyengar, and I'm a Redmond resident working on a community project related to public pickleball court usage. Redmond has a growing pickleball community, but one issue players run into is not knowing whether public courts are open, full, or have a long wait before they arrive. Since many courts are first come, first serve, and don't have reservations, residents can end up driving between parks or waiting without knowing if another nearby court is more available. We are building a free court crowd reporting tool for Redmond players. A player can open the app, see recent reports for public pickleball courts, and submit a quick update saying whether the court is open, somewhat busy, or packed. Our goal is simple. We want to help residents make better use of existing public courts. Our tool doesn't reserve courts, it doesn't charge users, we don't have cameras on the courts, and we don't collect sensitive personal data. We just want to crowd report pickleball courts similar to a community status board. We think this could help reduce frustration at busy courts, reduce unnecessary driving between parks, and give the city useful high-level information about when and where pickleball demand is highest. We're asking for help moving this from an informal project to a properly reviewed city-supported pilot. We'd like the council to refer us to the Parks and Recreation staff to discuss a possible 30-day pilot at Perigo Park, Meadow Park, and the municipal campus courts. The pilot would be simple. We would just have QR codes at the courts, a free app where players report court crowding, and a basic summary of usage trends shared back with city staff. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I'm sharing your contact information with our staff. So thank you. Next is David Morton.
Good evening, council members and mayor. I'm David Morton. I've followed the city's water quality and land use work closely this year. I want to draw your attention to an interdependency that deserves closer scrutiny in the Southeast Redmond Manufacturing and Industrial Center, or Southeast, or SEMIC Strategy Guide. The guide confirms that the SEMIC sits atop the aquifer supplying 40% of Redmond's drinking water, meaning that critical aquifer recharge areas 1 and 2 overlap the SEMIC. The existing conditions report states that roughly 200 of the district's approximately 2,300 net new job capacity depends on rezoning the remaining 16 acres of semi-rural residential land to industrial. The report states that rezoning is contingent on completing the Evans Creek relocation project. Construction on that relocation project is anticipated for 2027, leaving a narrow window to act before that timeline closes. That means the city's economic development numbers are now tied to the same construction timeline, which should include PFAS testing before ground is broken at the Creek relocation site. If PFAS contamination is found after relocation construction begins, the city faces not just a water quality problem, but a threat to the job capacity this strategy guide is counting on. The guide notes that new development in the SEMIC faces stricter environmental standards for runoff and contamination control. These same standards should apply to the Evans Creek relocation project, the project which makes this rezoning possible. Tonight's staff report references the city's response to Senate Bill 6026 as the vehicle for the industrial, manufacturing, and business park zoning map updates proposed for inclusion on the 2026 to 2027 docket of comprehensive plan amendments. The issue of the CARA overlapping the industrial rezoning in southeast Redmond deserves explicit documented treatment in that docket work, not just a passing mention in the strategy guide. My requests are straightforward. First, conduct baseline PFAS testing at the Creek relocation site before Evans Creek relocation construction begins. And second, during the annual docket process, ensure that the overlap of the CARA with the SEMIC rezoning is explicitly addressed when considering the proposal to update industrial land use zoning maps, policies, and regulations for inclusion on the annual docket. Thank you.
And no one has signed to speak up remotely. Items from the audience is now closed. Our next item of business is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any items to be pulled? Councilmember Kritzer.
Item number 7.
Okay. Any other items to be pulled? Seeing none, this is, let's see. Consent item number 8, I need to read, and 6, I'll read an ordinance into the record. Ordinance number 3262, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Redmond, Washington, amending ordinance numbers 3196, 3215, 3224, 3229, 3236, 3250, and 3252, making adjustments to the city's 2025-2026 biennial budget in Exhibit 1. And consent item number 8, ordinance number 3264, an ordinance of the City of Redmond, Washington, amending pay plans TC and TCS in order to set salaries for police telecommunicator employees covered by the Teamsters Local Union 117 bargaining unit for the year 2026, providing for severability and establishing an effective date. This will be a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries 7-0. Next, would anyone like to move a consent item number 7?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Forsyth, would you like to, actually it was pulled by Kritzer, but I know you wanted to speak on it too. So since you moved it, I'll have Councilmember Forsyth speak first and then I'll have Councilmember Kritzer speak second. Oh, you're good? Okay. Councilmember Kritzer, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we had a bit of public comment about this tonight, and I also had some questions and want to recognize that I did miss our committee meeting where this was covered, but just want to make sure before we take this vote that we are clear on the impacts of this potential policy. So if it's possible, I had a question for the staff on this. In particular, I think whether we can get some clarity on permits and whether permits will be required for all types of signage, or whether whether certain types of signage would not require a permit.
Thank you. I'll have staff come up. I'm not certain which one. Thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself and you can speak to her question? Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay, yes. Good evening. I'm Lauren Albert, Senior Planner from Long Range Planning. I've been doing a lot of work on this code. So thank you for your question. At this time, we are not moving forward with any permit system for the temporary non-commercial signs. We're going to explore what some of our neighboring communities have been doing on this, and then we'll return to council next year with that.
Great. So for the listening public, signage for non-commercial signage would be allowed without going to City Hall to get a permit?
Exactly.
Great. And then second question, just in terms of the placement, are we changing our current policy? In particular, I noticed included in this policy is a restriction on affixing to things like poles, trees, utility poles, et cetera. Is that a marked change from our current policy? Or is it just formalizing something that we haven't necessarily been enforcing? Because I know sometimes we do see flyering on those types of poles.
It's adhering to our current regulations, kind of affixing things to utility poles, to actually sticking things on trees is not currently permitted.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question, but I will pause in case other council members have questions.
Are there any other questions from other council members? I see none, so please go ahead.
Great. My last question is just in terms of the restrictions of areas, especially the new sightline restrictions, or whether those are new, if you can just clarify whether those are new, or again, we're just clarifying those, as well as the amount of feet that signs have to be from the roadway and to the kind of connected foot buffers. I guess my only question that I'm curious about is, if we did an analysis, if this in certain areas of the city would essentially mean that it would be impossible to be able to have non-commercial signage, because I think that's not the intention of this, and I understand the intention, but I just wanted to make sure that we did that analysis, looking at the actual landscapes of the city, especially if we're taking away roundabout ability or median ability.
So you just referred to commercial signs, but we're talking about
Non-commercial, sorry, non-commercial is what I meant.
Could you introduce yourself for the?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Carol Helland, Planning and Community Development Director. And with respect to the sightline issues, those actually exist currently in our municipal code, but the sightline issues were also incorporated into the sign code because it was, people were having a hard time finding that and complying with that, and we were removing a lot of signs that created sightline problems.
Okay. And in terms of communication, so can you clarify the net changes that the public would expect to see that in terms of the placement? Are there any significant changes, or is it mostly just clarifying what we currently have?
My read is it is currently clarifying, especially location. So it's clarifying basically durability, it's clarifying location, and then originally, the code included permitting and timelines, which were removed, and then the code doesn't go into effect until January 1.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Just wanted to make sure that the public is clear as well on the changes that we're making here and how it aligns with what they can come to expect.
And then just, Lauren is reminding me, just so in case that it wasn't apparent from the reading of the ordinance itself, medians were added back in after the conversation that occurred at council during the committee report and the study session.
And sorry, one last question, just so that everyone can hear. Can you share with us about the communications plan from now to when the ordinance goes into effect?
So we'll work with comms to make sure that everyone is aware. We also have our code enforcement officers generally send out to any campaigns information about how to comply with the sign code. And Lauren may have some other, do you have any other?
We'll definitely send it out in our general, in the communications that we use, our newsletters, and we'll work with our communications department to make sure there's press release, there's news releases, that it's included in our plans, policy, and regulations newsletter, which covers most of our zoning code updates. So we'll sort of spread a wide net of trying to get this information out there. We also have it going into effect January 1st, so it gives us some time to do that communication with the public and with campaigns.
Just an add-on to that for a sign-specific approach as well is that Councilmember Forsyth and I spoke about earlier today was that if we can identify who the owner of a sign is and the sign was located illegally, for instance, and we took it, the city under the code enforcement provisions is required to hold that sign for 30 days and contact the owner and allow them to pick it up.
Great, thank you.
And that will be another educational opportunity.
I appreciate that. I think especially given some of the public comment we heard tonight about, signage being intended to promote free expression or, different types of community events or artistic intentions, that making sure that we have that provision is really important. Thank you.
Thank you. And any other questions this evening on this item? I think, and Councilmember Forsyth's questions were answered earlier. I'm going to read the ordinance into the record. Ordinance number 3263, an ordinance of the City of Redmond, Washington, amending Title 21 of the Redmond Municipal Code, known as the Redmond Zoning Code, addressing temporary non-commercial signs, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date. This will be a roll call vote, starting with Council President Stewart.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And that passes 7-0. Thank you so much. Let's see. Our next item of business is AM number 26116, public hearing for an amended interim official control regulating commercial drone land uses and adoption of an ordinance affirming the amendment. I'm going to read the ordinance into the record. Ordinance number 3265, an ordinance of the City of Redmond, Washington, affirming an interim official control to amend Article 1, zone-based regulations, and Article 7, definitions of the Redmond Zoning Code to establish interim regulations for commercial drone land uses, affirming a work plan, updating findings of fact, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date. And I have yet once again, Carol Helen, Director of Planning and Community Development, will introduce this item.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. We're here this evening to hold the public hearing on Ordinance 3257 that was previously adopted as an interim official control that ended up prohibiting the development of drone ports in Redmond. This public hearing is required by state law because council modified the original interim official control that was adopted on April 21st of this year. Tonight, I'm joined by Glenn Coyle, who's going to provide some additional details regarding the action that we are asking council to take this evening.
Good evening, council members. I'm Glenn Coyle, Senior Planner on the Long Range Planning Team. We are here tonight to hold a public hearing on the amendment to Ordinance 3257, adopted on June 2nd, 2026, which prohibits drone port land uses in Redmond for 1 year while the city considers permanent regulations for such uses. Following the public hearing, staff recommends adopting an ordinance affirming council's actions on June 2nd, affirming the work plan for developing permanent regulations, and adopting updated findings of fact. As a recap of the work plan, it has a duration of 12 months, which will culminate by April of next year, with council adopting final land use regulations on drone ports. In addition, there are 2 additional tracks of this work: developing business licensing around commercial drone delivery operations and establishing an Office of Airspace Management. Planning will lead to development of land use regulations, while finance will lead in the business licensing. Redmond Police is developing the Office of Airspace Management. We are currently in the community engagement phase, which includes a website or a web page on our website, articles in the city's newsletters, and a questionnaire available online. Later this summer, we will begin drafting final regulations where the Planning Commission will review this, which will review this fall, as well as hold a public hearing. The Planning Commission will make a recommendation this winter, and council will begin its review early next year. The other 2 efforts will happen concurrently. With that, I turn it back to the mayor.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions at the moment for staff? All right, seeing none. The public hearing is now open. We have 3 people signed up in person to speak, and no one has signed up online. I will call up your name and come up to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to address the council on the subject of the public hearing. So Adam Reinke, David Morton, and then Katie Kendall.
Hi, my name is Adam Reineke. I'm a homeowner on Education Hill for 7.5 years. I don't own a drone and have no connection to the drone or delivery industries, but I'm a software engineer and naturally a tech optimist. I was genuinely excited to see a drone loading bay in the construction permits for Pagliacci 2 years ago. I don't usually use instant delivery apps, but I regularly drive out for a single item. Domino's for dinner, Home Depot for a box of screws, QFC for eggs or medicine. As a father of 2 young kids, these short trips, like coming here tonight, take a real bite out of our family's routine, and drone delivery is the kind of thing that gives back that time. I want to raise 2 primary angles that I don't think came up yet, listening to the transcripts from earlier. The first is that wherever the drone ports end up, they're going to concentrate jobs and traffic there. I'm glad this means fewer delivery vehicles on residential streets, but if a store doesn't have drone loading capabilities, they may end up trucking orders out to a shared drone port, and warehouses or ghost kitchens that are serving those ports would generate their own truck traffic to and from those facilities. That traffic concentrates. I would like to ask the council to steer toward locations that are close to highways and offer direct high-volume routes out of the city so that the concentrated traffic doesn't end up snarling undersized roads. Second is that if Redmond doesn't make room for this soon, will drone ports simply just go up outside city limits where we have no say over the traffic they create? Zipline has advertised a 10-mile round-trip range. Unincorporated King County or a neighboring city is well within range. If that happens, we may lose any ability to shape where the associated ground traffic lands, and we may also lose support for local businesses if residents start ordering dinner from Duval instead of Redmond. Other issues on my mind, though I think they've been covered, are that lower carbon emissions for drones versus dedicated trips is a win for city climate goals and traffic reduction. But the reduction of delivery driver jobs in the city is a loss for gig workers who need that income. I would hope that these job losses are offset by the delivery ecosystem as a whole, shifting those jobs around, but I don't have data either way. In conclusion, I believe there's an inevitability to drone delivery, so I encourage council to not wait too long on the next steps. Thank you, and I hope I get to see you all at National Night Out in 2 weeks, though my 2 young kids are probably more excited about the fire trucks than the council. Thank you.
Next is David Morton, then Katie Kendall.
Good evening, council members and mayor. I'm David Morton. I live just outside Redmond city limits, so I have a stake in decisions affecting this community, even though I cannot vote in city elections. I'm speaking in support of ordinance number 3265, affirming the June 2nd amendment to the interim official control that now prohibits commercial drone land uses in the manufacturing, park, and industry zones. That amendment was a direct response to testimony this council received on noise, privacy, and safety, including my own comments at the June 2nd hearing. And I want to thank council and staff for taking that feedback seriously. I do have 4 requests as the city moves into the permanent rulemaking phase outlined in the work plan. First, on stakeholder engagement, the work plan describes months 1 through 4 as stakeholder engagement, largely through the Drone Ports webpage and Let's Connect page. As the process moves into months 5 through 8 and the Planning Commission hearing, I'd ask staff to supplement passive online engagement with direct notification to residents and property owners near any zones where drone land uses remain conditionally allowed. Second, on definitions. The findings note that Ordinance 3257's original limited allowances didn't adequately address community concerns, which suggests the underlying definitions of commercial drone land uses were too permissive or unclear. I'd ask that the permanent code amendments define takeoff and landing facilities, delivery hubs, and related infrastructure with enough precision to prevent that same ambiguity. Third, on coordination, the ordinance itself acknowledges that land use controls alone cannot stop drone traffic originating outside Redmond, and effective regulation requires coordination with the FAA and neighboring jurisdictions. I'd ask that the forthcoming Office of Air Management formalize that coordination early, rather than treating it as a downstream detail. Fourth, on environmental review, as staff scope permanent regulations, I ask they confirm early whether critical aquifer recharge areas or other environmentally sensitive areas overlap with any zones that still conditionally allow drone land uses. That way, any necessary review is built into the process rather than addressed after applications are filed. I support adoption of Ordinance 3265 tonight, and I look forward to participating in the stakeholder process ahead. Thank you.
Next is Katie Kendall.
Good evening, council members. My name is Katie Kendall, and I'm an attorney with McCullough Hill. I'm here on behalf of Zipline, who is affected by the current moratorium on drone delivery charging stations within Redmond. Zipline is an American company and the world's largest autonomous delivery service. It started as an idea to close the gap in healthcare access in rural parts of Rwanda and is now expanding into the United States. Their drone services are currently available in 25 communities in the U.S., and they would love to be able to serve the citizens of Redmond as well. The goal in Redmond would be to provide a service to local businesses to efficiently deliver items to residents and expand their reach on delivery, reducing vehicular traffic along the way, as you heard from the first commenter. This would start with delivery from local restaurants and stores and hopefully expand to prescriptions and healthcare in the future. Using drone delivery is a new technology in this area, and Council is understandably approaching this new technology with caution. We've been working with staff to better their understanding of Zipline services and have worked with the Redmond Police Chief to address his questions and hopefully alleviate his concerns as well. While we have been able to connect with a few of you to explain how Zipline works, we look forward to speaking with all of you in the future and addressing any questions that you may have on this item. I'm commenting today to reiterate Zipline's commitment to working with staff, the Planning Commission, and Council on permanent regulations that would allow the Zipline to locate its docking stations here in Redmond. We believe one of the best ways to inform this conversation is to obtain real-life information through a temporary pilot program where Zipline is able to operate for a set period of time to understand what works and what needs to be adjusted to meet the needs of Redmond residents. This could be done by allowing in this legislation for something like a temporary use permit to be issued by the Planning Department with conditions and monitoring requirements. We would ask the Council to consider allowing such a program to be developed as part of the information gathering for developing the permanent regulations. We look forward to continuing this conversation with you all, and thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
No one has signed up to speak remotely. The public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion to approve AM number 26116, ordinance number 3265?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or questions this evening? Council President.
Thank you so much. I look forward to adopting this ordinance today, and I appreciate the folks who took the additional time to come out and participate in our public hearing tonight. Thank you so much for sharing your feedback and creating some new questions for our list as we embark on the work with staff and the Planning Commission and the community to build permanent regulations for over the next year. I also want to acknowledge that these regulations regarding the land use are just one of a three-part recipe. Council had a briefing earlier today regarding the Office of Airspace Management that's being proposed, and some federal dollars have been sought for some technology, it sounds like. So that conversation resulted in the request for additional information and for the council to study a study session to learn more. Additionally, I think there are a series of questions related to the business licensing issue that council has not yet had time on the schedule to review. So looking forward to having a comprehensive conversation about this topic as we go through the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. I think Council President Stewart really summarized it very nicely. I would just add, I look forward to the public engagement portion of the study and agree with Mr. Morton's comments about having it be more direct stakeholdering and not just online surveys. I think that is really critical to make sure that we're getting all the community voices that we heard from initially when this first came up, and making sure that we're getting a full picture. I'm intrigued by the potential of a pilot program, but not without that stakeholdering deep dive before a consideration like that were to come forward. So I appreciate the conversation and look forward to learning more and watching this develop.
Thank you. Council Vice President.
Thank you. I wanted to briefly go back to the last conversation that we had about this and the kind of redirection that we ended up going instead of having the interim operating controls put in place to then shift over to a moratorium. That shift came very abruptly, and I wanted to acknowledge the staff's intent and was effectively creating a moratorium with the original proposition, and that was having an overlay of zoned areas where Zipline had even attested to there's simply not any property. Now, had we gone forward with that, then that would have also created areas where we could zone, and then no further ports could be built. With this, my understanding is that the ports can still be built, just not used. So we may have some unintentional consequences down the line. I'm very intrigued to see how this is going to play out, and I'm confident that through our collaboration that we're going to get to a best case scenario without doubt, regardless of which direction that we had taken. Overall, even though that I do have those concerns about who may be grandfathered in now because of how we're moving forward, as one of my colleagues had brought up in the last discussion. Again, I do support this moving forward, and I'm confident that we can get to a best case scenario.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councilmember Kritzer, then Councilmember Precria.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments from my colleagues. And I will just note I've had quite a bit of discussion with community members about this. Also got to talk with the folks at Zipline to hear some of the perspective of their work. And I think I just want to emphasize that the decision that we're making right now is just to give us the time to go out and be able to engage with community, engage with businesses that are interested in this, and hopefully to be able to figure out what's kind of the right path forward and what are the right set of regulations for this that's going to meet our community's needs and not just surprise our community when there isn't an urgent need for us to act so quickly, to not bring them along with us. My hope is that for those who are interested in this from the business side, you can appreciate that this is actually hopefully would make any future use of commercial drones in our area more successful if we bring our community along with us and we figure out the way to do that. And I think for community members, I hope you hear that we are making this decision to make sure that we do go deep with you, that we also, and that we think about all the different tools that we have in place, even if we don't have every policy tool. For example, we can't regulate the airspace itself, but being able to look at the policy tools that we have within the city of Redmond, and we take that responsibility really seriously. So, and I hope that the process going forward can be collaborative as we look at this emerging technology. Thanks.
Councilmember Precria.
Well, first, I just want to echo the comments of my colleague, Councilmember Kritzer, in saying that what we are doing now is getting ourselves more time to go about, if this is something we want to explore, going about this in the right way. But I just had a point of clarification based off of what my colleague, Council Vice President Nueva Camina said. I may have misunderstood, but my understanding of this interim official control was that the moratorium does ban the construction of the ports themselves, not just the usage of drones on ports in Redmond. If there's someone on staff that could speak to that.
Yeah. Glenn?
Yes, that's correct. The moratorium doesn't allow any drone port land uses in the city of Redmond, so it would not be permitted.
Was that answered? Was that clarification for you?
Yes, thank you, Glenn.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll just stand here, just in case you have any other questions.
Any other questions for Glenn? Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Thank you. My understanding, and perhaps this is, I may have misunderstood this, but because we didn't have anything put in place, there was no actual code, then that was why we currently have a business that has a landing pad that was built, because they didn't require the permit, because we didn't have anything, there was nothing for us to control.
That is correct, and it was also in the historic zone. So the concern was what these type of drone land-in and takeoff things. Yes, the Pagliacci example was done by Zipline. Their business model has changed since that original Pagliacci thing. And when we had done the original work, we really were looking at a kind of how Zipline would deploy a large operation, and also Amazon's type of operation where it's more like a fulfillment center with pads with drones would take off. So the concern at the time was that those kind of operations would proliferate in residential and other things like that where there was no regulation. So that's what the original interim official control was, really to those drone ports, as we say. There's a lot of different terminology out there, but those kind of fulfillment or deployment type places. And the thought was limit that to where there are other delivery type operations, so industrial or manufacturing park.
And my understanding, just for perfect, super simple language, is that with the moratorium, it just means that they cannot have a permit to then land, but they can still build the infrastructure for when we do have something available. Is that correct, or has it got real confusing in the last month?
So if they were to declare that they were doing a drone port, that would be a use that would not be permitted. So they would not be able to construct that use. If they were to came in, had a plan that had a rack on it, it met setbacks, it met all the other things, and they were constructing something but did not declare what that use was, it probably could be permitted under dimensional requirements. I mean, we would start asking questions because it's like, what the heck are you building out here? And so the likelihood that something would be built would be pretty risky endeavor, because the use would never be able to be effectuated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Are any other questions this evening? Right, thank you. Seeing none, this will be a voice vote, starting with Council President Stewart.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And that passes 7-0. Our next item of business is a staff report, making sure I'm doing the right thing, on the tree code update to the Redmond zoning code. Carol Helland, she's back again, Director of Planning and Community Development, will introduce this item as well.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Again, Carol Helland, Planning and Community Development Director. Hello, Council. Tonight, I'm going to be joined by Senior Planner Lauren Anderson and Senior Park Planner Cameron Zapata, and they're going to provide a staff report updating Council on the status of our tree code amendment project that we've been working on. Remember, this amendment project was actually reinitiated earlier this year after it had been paused pending the outcome of Growth Board case addressing the balance between tree retention and the mandate for us to plan for and accommodate housing. And some of the commenters earlier today were talking about that kind of friction point. Cameron and Lauren will get into greater detail, but I wanted to emphasize the importance of proceeding with these changes now. The current regulations were adopted in 1998 when Redmond had a population of just over 44,000 people and was taking a more conservative approach to growth. And since then, our population has almost doubled, and Redmond lacks attainable housing to support the growth that's mandated by the state right now, generating this need for us to refine our approach to tree management. Although the review of the regulations is warranted now to assure alignment with Redmond 2050 and to reflect community values and appropriately balance competing interests. And with that, I will turn the microphone over to Lauren and to Cameron.
Right. Good evening, City Council. We are here today to provide a status update and introduction of the Redmond Zoning Code Tree Code Update. I'm Lauren Anderson, Senior Planner.
And I'm Cameron Zapata, Senior Park Planner.
Tonight, we plan to provide some background and an introduction to the Tree Code Update. Then we will share the timeline for the project. Staff has held community engagement meetings, and we will share the feedback we have heard so far. We will also share the key changes, and then lastly, we'll go over our next steps and gather comments. Redmond's current tree protection regulations were adopted back in 1998 and haven't been updated in over 20 years, as Carol mentioned earlier. Since then, the city has experienced significant growth, and it's time to align the regulations to meet our intended goals. A major part of this update is consistency and compliance with the planning framework that we operate within. Under the Growth Management Act, Redmond is inside an urban growth boundary, which means we will continue to absorb population growth as a part of the effort to limit regional sprawl. Because of this, the city must find the right balance between state-mandated growth and maintaining, protecting, and replacing trees. To highlight how much has changed, so between 1998 to recent, Redmond has seen the following growth. So the population grew by 46%. We've seen an increase in single-family units by 39%, and then a 55% increase in multifamily units, and then a 47% increase in jobs. So this level of growth reinforces why this tree code update is needed. The Redmond 2050 Comprehensive Plan directs most new growth into downtown, Overlake, and Marymoor Village to support light rail and encourage density. Any updates to the tree code must align with these policies and accommodate infill development, middle housing, and other tools that help manage growth. Overall, the tree code will guide tree removal and protection for both development and non-development activities. Updating the code is an important step to ensure we're protecting growth while protecting Redmond's urban forest. Next, we have our overall goals and objectives. So our overall goal is to adopt updated tree regulations that are clear, aligned with Redmond's community values, and are consistent with our Redmond 2050 Comprehensive Plan. The intent is to strike a balance of protecting and retaining trees while also accommodating the growth we are required to plan for. As mentioned in the previous slide, Redmond must support continued population and housing growth, and our tree regulations need to reflect that reality. To achieve this, we have identified several key objectives. First, we're ensuring strong involvement from both internal and external stakeholders so the regulations truly align with the community's vision. Second, we're identifying gaps in the current code to improve clarity around how tree protection is applied. Third, provide a clear system for annual reporting so progress can be measured and communicated. We will do this by continuing to track the amount of tree removals through our permitting system, InterGov. Fourth, build a framework that supports both current and future tree protection. Fifth, alignment with our plans and policies, which I'll talk about more in the next slide. Finally, we'll provide accessible informational guides that help residents and interested parties to better understand tree protection, removal, planting, maintenance, and the broader benefits of trees. Overall, the code needs to be clearer, aligned, and easier for everyone to use. The expanded list of our goals and objectives are listed on the Tree Code Let's Connect webpage. So here's the tree regulations relationships. So we have our comprehensive plan, also known as Redmond 2050, which then helps shape our functional and strategic plans, which we have 5 listed here on the slide, which includes our tree canopy strategic plan. And then those plans then help shape our regulatory plans, which includes Redmond Zoning Code and the Redmond Municipal Code. So this update, we're focusing on the Redmond Zoning Code 2172 tree regulations, as well as 2130070 cultural resources, 2178 definitions, and then any references to 2172 throughout the zoning code. And then on the right-hand side of the slide, we have the roles and responsibilities. So the community provides ongoing input throughout the entire process. And then it's staff's responsibility to draft the code and implement the regulations post-adoption. And then the Planning Commission hosts a public hearing and then makes a recommendation to the City Council after reviewing the code to make sure that it aligns with our comprehensive plan. And then the City Council reviews and adopts the code amendments. So here's our overview of our schedule. So from February to April, staff drafted the code and worked closely with planning, code enforcement, public works, and park staff to ensure clarity and incorporate feedback. Our current step is the community engagement piece. Cameron will go over the details in the next slide. In August, we'll go to the technical committee, and tomorrow we will be introducing the tree code update to the Planning Commission, which will begin several months of the Planning Commission process. We anticipate this process will go into December. A revised public draft will be released in the next couple of days and will reflect the community feedback that we have received so far. Early next year, from January to March 2027, the City Council will conduct its review and adoption process. There will be a public hearing in October where the public can submit comments and voice their feedback. After the Planning Commission recommends approval to the Council, we'll then start the Council review and adoption process. And then finally, in April 2027, we will host learning sessions for the public and interested parties to help everyone understand the updated code. We'll also be doing internal training for staff.
For community outreach and involvement, we're using several tools to keep people informed and engaged throughout the tree code process. First, we've set up a general tree code update email address so that the community can email us with their questions, comments, and concerns. We've also hosted 4 learning sessions where we invited the community to learn more about the direction of the tree code update. And then we've also held 2 office hours to give people a chance to ask questions and provide any comments in a more conversational setting. And then we'll be hosting one more office hour on July 29th from 12 to 1 p.m. at City Hall and virtually. To gather input, we also launched a Let's Connect questionnaire, and this is still open and it will continue to be open until July 31st. And so far we've received 35 responses. We're also spreading the word through e-news, newsletters, and social media to reach a broader audience. And then we plan to connect in person at Derby Days, where community members can stop by our booth and learn more about the project and ways that they can participate. And then after code adoption, we'll continue supporting the community and staff with additional learning sessions and producing guides and handouts to ensure that everyone understands the updates and how they'll be applied. This slide, I wanted to highlight the key themes that we've heard from the community so far. Residents shared strong interest in how hazardous trees are replaced. The code update includes a 1-to-1 replacement ratio for landmark and heritage trees that are deemed hazardous. We also heard concerns about the tree credit multiplier and how it will impact development, especially heavily treed lots where compliance can feel more challenging. Several commenters pointed to the importance of aligning definitions with the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI, A300, guidelines to ensure technical accuracy. And then property line trees came up frequently as well, with questions about responsibility and then how those trees are counted. There was also notable support for increasing trees in downtown and our urban centers, as well as ideas for approaches to address slow deforestation citywide. Some folks asked for a clear distinction between what qualifies as trees versus hedges or shrubs. And then at the same time, community members also asked for clarity in development flexibilities and more options with that. We know that outreach and education does remain important, and people have asked for more accessible information and opportunities to ask questions. And overall, this feedback has really helped shape some adjustments and clarifications that we've made in the draft code. With this slide, I'll walk through some of the key changes that are included in the tree code update so far. We've updated several definitions in section 21.78 to improve clarity and alignment with industry standards. And the code also refines how tree credits are applied during development, ensuring that the system is more predictable and easier to use. Enforcements and penalties have been strengthened to support compliance, and we've clarified how the tree fee in lieu funds can be used to support our tree canopy goals. We also updated the criteria for exception requests to make the process more transparent. And then, as mentioned earlier, the tree code includes guidance for replacing hazardous landmark and heritage trees, and then also adds development flexibilities to help projects meet requirements while still protecting critical trees on site. A key addition is the Tree Protection Zone, or TPZ, which outlines the consistent standards for protecting trees during construction. We've introduced programmatic permitting as well, allowing city projects to be reviewed in a more streamlined way. And then we've also added standards to regulate and protect heritage trees, or trees over 50 inches in diameter at breast height, and also added standards for identifying and managing culturally modified trees under section 21.30.070. And then finally, we've updated tree replacement standards by prioritizing conifers and providing more clarity and aligned locations for off-site tree replacements.
So next steps, we will be going to the technical committee this year in August. And then the Planning Commission process will go from July to December. And then we have our public hearing October 14th this year, 2026. And then City Council process will begin January through March 2027 with an anticipated goal of adoption in March 2027. So tonight we wanted to say thank you, and you can check out our Let's Connect webpage to view the draft code documents and see the future Let's Connect questionnaire results and public comments once the questionnaire is closed on July 31st. And then the second draft, as noted earlier, will be released in a couple days, which will be on that Let's Connect webpage. So tonight, staff is wondering if you have any comments or concerns about the direction that we are heading in based on the key changes that we've presented today.
Great. Thank you both so very much. I know how much work this has been and how many stakeholders you have engaged so far, even to this point. Are there any comments right now from council? I'm going to start at the end and work my way down. Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you so much for the presentation and for your work on this. I know to a lot of our residents, our trees are so much of what makes Redmond such a special place to live. And in particular, our commitment to our tree canopy strategic plan is also part of the way that we make that happen is also by having good regulations around in our tree code. So really appreciate the work on this. 4 years ago, we were literally about to send it to consent when there was action that happened in Kirkland that made us take a pause on this. And we, at the time, I think had said that we would likely be revisiting within a year. I do want to call out that it has been 4 years. So I do hope My understanding at that time was that we were going to wait and see, and then we had kind of the package that was ready, and we could have brought it back. I understand that now probably things have changed. There's been more engagement. I feel the timeline, adding almost an additional year now, feels challenging to me, just because when I think about at that time, we were hoping to add some more in that would have allowed us to have more trees planted, replaced, generate more fee in lieu income, to be able to support our tree canopy strategic plan. So I guess I would just urge to all of us to stick to this existing timeline and to make sure that we do adopt this as quickly as we can, while also engaging our community. And again, appreciating all the work that's gone in and the complications that have happened over time. But I would just say, and then I would say, as we move into this, I would be interested, you kind of mentioned some of the key changes from the tree code that's existing now, but I would also be interested to be able to see what is going to be proposed that the Planning Commission's looking at, and to have a copy of what we were looking at 4 years ago to understand what changed since 4 years ago. So that way we're going into that clear-eyed as well.
Director Helen, would you like to?
I would just like to point out one thing, big thing that's happened in the last 4 years is we adopted Redmond 2050. We got mandates for middle housing. So there actually has been a lot of contextual change to the layer, and it started with the growth board appeal that was happening in Kirkland because of the impediments they felt that tree retention was creating. But we have also made progress on the tree strategic plan, the tree canopy strategic plan, because we're actually this is a good time to note that Parks just released their information about the next tree giveaway. This will be our second. We also, if you go actually onto the tree code, before you ever get to the permit requirements, you get actually some education in why trees are important and why you should retain them. So I think it's important to remember the context and the ground has shifted underneath us in the last 4 years, and I think that this will be a more nuanced conversation. And how do we achieve our canopy expectations? It can't be all on the burden of individual property owners. It has to be us planting more trees in the downtown, reforesting parks, which Director Hamilton has talked about. So there's a range of issues that will come forward as a part of this plan. Also just wanted to note that the Planning Commission needs to actually do that outreach. And so all of that information will be provided to them, and the council then essentially is involved once the Planning Commission's work has ripened to a recommendation that comes to you. So that's where we are in the process right now.
Thank you.
Councilmember Prakria.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Cameron, for your presentation and all your work on this. We heard earlier from two members of the community public comment about code enforcement being unavailable on the weekends for tree removal. I was wondering if you could speak to that and speak to maybe some options that are available to council if this is something we're interested in remedying. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're currently working on creating a GIS layer that will track tree removal permits. That'll be available to the public to view any approved tree removal permit. So if there is any tree removal that's happening on the weekend when we don't have staff available, people can check that resource and then can see, was this approved or not approved? But we're still working on creating that layer.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Forsyth, then Council Vice President Nueva Camino.
Thank you. Thank you for that additional information. That was a question that I was curious about, if community could go and check to see if there is a permit. So appreciate that's in the works. I second and appreciate the comments from Councilmember Kritzer, because we were on the verge of passing this 4 years ago. I understand things have changed, appreciate the context and the clarification. But at that time, it was very jarring for those of us that were on council, because it it was reactionary to what was going on at the time, and we were all very eager to pass it, as our community was very eager for us to pass it as well. So I guess my only request would be, when we do see this conversation coming back to council, is to know where those shifts and changes happened from the version 4 years ago, and the version 2 that's coming out in a couple weeks. If you could just send that to council so that we can be kept up to speed on how the conversation is moving, if we so choose to dive into it, just so that we know when we're having conversations in community what the most current version is that we're looking at, and so that we're just kept apprised of what's going on.
Yes, we can do that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Council Vice President.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing us up to date, and I'm looking forward to seeing, since there was many of us that weren't on council at that time, what those changes were. Going back to the weekend permitting and that GIS layer that we're hoping to add in, love that neighbors will be able to check on, what is currently permitted. But then what is the next step after that? Because what I heard tonight was that there isn't anybody to do anything about it over the weekend. Police won't come out because they're not going to do anything about it. So with the GIS layer that would be added in, are we still missing the enforcement piece?
So we'll work on enforcement. That piece doesn't go to the Planning Commission because it's in a separate chapter of the code. You will remember that actually 4 years ago, you did actually pass some additional enforcement provisions, and we actually have collected quite a few fines when we have learned of tree removal that has been unpermitted. That doesn't bring the tree back, but in one event, we did recover about $22,000 based on the value of the trees that were removed. Part of the GIS layer is then figuring out what staff are available on the weekend to actually enforce if there is no permit. So we would be having a multi-department conversation about what staff are available on the weekend. Is it police? Is it someone else? Is it staff that we need to bring on in to be on call? There's a revenue issue attached to that. But that if everyone has information about whether there's a permit or not, regardless of who ends up being assigned to that task, they can respond quickly with either public information back to the person that the removal is permitted or it is not, and then respond. So that is part of the program that we're working on right now.
Wonderful. Thank you for that clarification.
Council Member Parsi, and then Council President.
So we discussed the balancing of development and tree canopy coverage. We have the goal of having 40%, if I'm not mistaken, tree canopy coverage in Redmond 2050. If we were not to supplement this program with things like tree giveaways and park reforestations, what would be the impact of this ordinance on tree canopy coverage? So I'm just trying to better understand the tree loss that we could experience with this, so we can understand how much we should supplement it with other programs in, say, 5-10 years. What would Redmond look like with this?
So I don't have that data, but that's something that we can look into and get back to you on. But the fee in lieu, we're hoping to expand that to potentially acquire parcels for retention and replanting, and then using that money to replant more trees in Redmond.
Council President.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe before I ask give a couple of my comments, I'll just respond to say there is no ordinance currently in front of the council. Staff are providing an update tonight on work to update the tree code, which will come back to the council on the timeline that was described. On a parallel track, the council had a study session on the tree canopy strategic plan about a year ago, and it was acknowledged very early on that plan needs a project manager, and we are expecting to have that conversation come back later through the budget process. And I do think there's something to be said about the tree code needing to set the environment and then a separate parallel track to make sure that the environment is set up to succeed and that the teams have the capacity for what they need. To that end, I just have a couple of questions to be thought about later, things that have come up in my conversations over the years with community members. I'm wondering what the code can do to help folks who planted the wrong tree in the wrong place 20 years ago navigate a resolution. There's a little bit of tension when a resident comes to our council conversation in the park and says, I understand I need to take this tree out now for this reason or that reason, and it's my fault, I planted it in the wrong place, but how can I make good on it now without needing to be punished for trying to do the right thing now? And if there was a way to do that in the code, that would be helpful. Additionally, I'm glad to hear you say, Lauren, that we're going to be reviewing the fee and lieu. I don't need an answer here today, but one of the policy questions I'll be interested in hearing in the recommendation is actually akin to what we've done in housing, which is, do we need to restrict fee and lieu in any way? Is there a point in which too much fee and lieu becomes unusable, and therefore we would need a recommendation in the code to pause fee and lieu revenues for a period of time in order to catch up with ourselves? So I look forward to hearing back on the conversation on that later in the year. And thank you so much for the outreach that you and the Planning Commission are doing on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Soni?
Because the Let's Connect questionnaire, I think that's ending on July 31st, and then it will be going to Planning Commission. So I don't know if it is the staff or it's the Planning Commission that is working on the outreach currently with this questionnaire. If it's landing to all builders, the environmental enthusiastic groups, and the different neighborhoods, I just wanted to ensure that we have the right set of targeted outreach that has been taken care of. And I'm not sure if this is the Planning Commission or if it's the staff, so just wanted to ask.
Yeah, so staff, we've been working on public outreach, so including the Let's Connect questionnaire. We've done social media, we've done e-news blasts, which includes economic development, plans, policies, and regulations, parks, and then as well as sustainability. So we're trying to reach as many stakeholders as we can. We've reached out to the tribes, master builders, so trying to get as many people as we can involved, and then attended a sustainability open office hour, and continuing to gather input. We have another open office hour July 29th to go over the second version of the draft code and answer questions and collect feedback on that. And then with the Planning Commission, then we'll have that public hearing in October and continue with the public engagement.
Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you so much for this great conversation, and appreciate the comments from my colleagues. I just wanted to put a fine point on what we did pass 4 years ago, which Director Helen alluded to in particular regarding enforcement, because at that time we did see quite a bit of unpermitted tree removal, and we recognized that most of the tree removal that happens it actually happens with the use of arborists. So that what we added at that time is that we tripled the fines for unpermitted tree removals by arborists. So that way it really deterred some of the action there. So I just wanted to clarify that, since not everyone was around at that time. And so just to recognize that number that Director Helen shared was a result of some of that policy change. But we might continue to look more at some of the regulatory options, as well as just the staffing to be able to do the enforcement, I think continues to be something that we might look at as a budget issue. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions this evening? Seeing none, look forward to hearing more at some point, and want to thank you and all that have been involved in getting us to this point, and look forward to hearing from the Planning Commission and that work. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Our next item of business is a staff report for the Southeast Redmond Manufacturing and Industrial Center Strategy Guide. Seraphy Allen, Deputy Director of Planning and Community Development, will introduce this item.
Good evening, City Council. Staff are here to give the council a report on the Southeast Redmond Manufacturing and Industrial Center Strategy Guide. I want to thank the council and the mayor for having the vision to fund this study in 25-26 budget cycle, as the job and industry needs identified in Redmond 2050 and the Economic Development Strategic Plan have only intensified from that period of time. So that was good on us to think of that ahead. The city has made strategic and thoughtful choices to increase the amount and types of housing capacity in our community, and we need to be just as strategic about our job growth, both ensuring we are meeting our job growth targets, but increasing our resiliency of the types of jobs so we are not overly dependent on one industry. Thus, while we are not asking City Council for any decisions tonight, there will be decisions ahead in the fall and next year, and we want to ensure the council and the public have the latest information about our kind of rapidly changing landscape. So with that, I'm joined by Lauren Alpert, a senior planner in our long-range planning division, and Philly Marsh, our economic development planning manager, and they will walk you through the existing conditions and strategy guide suggestions of the report. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lauren.
Thank you, Seraphy. Good evening, council again. Get my technology working here. Okay. We are here today to give, as Seraphy said, an update on our Southeast Redmond manufacturing and industrial market study. Study was conducted from last summer, 2025, through this spring, 2026. So we're going to review the background, why we conducted this study, do a brief summary of the findings, and then some of the strategies that are underway currently and some of the proposed strategies for a successful center in the future. So to better understand the context of why and purpose of the market study and the Southeast Redmond MIC, we need to better understand the timeline and input from the previous rezoning efforts, Redmond 2050, and the Economic Development Strategic Plan. In 2021, we began the process and the application process for a new countywide designation of a manufacturing and industrial center in Southeast Redmond. This was especially important to maintain our industrial and manufacturing jobs and also have a potential place for displaced businesses, especially as Mary Moore was rezoned in 2017 to accommodate housing around the new light rail stations coming in. The Southeast Redmond MIC vision was informed by the Redmond 2050 planning process, the Economic Strategic Plan, and also this recent market study. Redmond 2050 included an estimated 29,760 jobs growth citywide, with about 2,600 of those jobs going into Southeast Redmond. As a reminder, the themes of Redmond 2050 included equity, sustainability, and resiliency, and that included a resilient and diverse economy. So the Economic Development Strategic Plan. The Southeast MIC is also supported by this plan through various policies and program actions. The designation of the Southeast MIC and market study are part of this longer timeline of plans and policies to maintain our industrial and manufacturing jobs in the city of Redmond. So now we have an idea of what the background and purpose was of this market study. Let's kind of go into what the center is. The center is a 375-acre primarily zoned for industrial and manufacturing park uses. It was recognized as part of in the Redmond 2050 Comprehensive Plan with the growth of jobs of 2,600 jobs by 2050. And in August 2025, Redmond actually put in our application for that countywide industrial growth center and will be recommended to the Growth Management Planning Council later this year. And as part of that countywide application, we conducted this market study last year. So what did we find in the market study? So the market study included a review of the existing conditions and market drivers, stakeholder engagement, a review of business opportunities and some specific site analysis, and also a robust strategy guide. So some of the key findings of that analysis. Vacancy rate in our SE MIC right now is currently 3.6%. To put that in context, a healthy vacancy rate is between 5 and 8%. So we don't have a lot of vacancy right now, which is not necessarily a great thing. We also specifically looked at our flexible space. So this is space, as defined by its name, it's flexible. It has a mix of offices, light manufacturing. It can have features like roll-up doors, high ceilings. It may have a retail-facing component. So a lot of the businesses that occupy these spaces include things like artisan producers, craft breweries and distilleries, sometimes recreational facilities like gymnastics or rock climbing gyms will operate in these flexible spaces. And what we saw in the data is that there is a mismatch between supply and demand. So there is a great need for these spaces, but the ones that we currently have aren't meeting those needs. There's also, it will get more positive, I swear. These are all the challenges. There is also some power constraints. Power was a concern noted by many of our stakeholders in this process. Specifically, the timeline and the costs for supplying power has been a major concern. All that being said, based on the market analysis and the stakeholder feedback, there's a lot of industries and businesses that present opportunities for the Southeast MIC. High-value, technology-driven industries that can exist in our current ecosystem of technology-driven companies, such as advanced manufacturing, robotics, and aerospace, make this area a prime location for these sectors. These sectors often require specialized facilities with high power and often require some specific anchor tenants to move in. Another opportunity is e-commerce and distribution. Businesses focused on that last mile distribution are likely to seek space in the MIC due to its strategic location and proximity to large customer base. There's also, as I mentioned, our small scale and legacy businesses. These areas could aim to attract small scale manufacturing, including breweries, distilleries, and recreational uses like those gymnastics and rock climbing gyms that may be being displaced from other areas in Redmond. So the market study identified all these things. It also identified actions that we could use to undertake short, medium, and long-term actions to create a successful MIC. So to further discuss these actions, I'm going to let Philly Marsh, our Economic Development Division Manager, describe current and future initiatives.
All right, thank you, Lauren. So fortunately, many of the recommendations in this study are already advancing through various partnerships and programs that we will continue to implement through the validation of this study. Some highlights include Senate Bill 6026 jump-started the conversation and need to preserve and update industrial and manufacturing zoning. The 2627 docket update to industrial, manufacturing, and business park land use and zoning will align with the land use strategies identified in this study. It will also address outstanding issues of the overlapping critical aquifer recharge area and other relevant environmental regulations. Greater Seattle Partners is our region's lead business investment and business attraction organization, and last year, Mayor Burney joined the board. By working closely with GSP, we can ensure that the Southeast Redmond Industrial Center, as well as specific sites, are featured for business attraction and site selectors. We're also working to form partnerships that allow for consolidated, just-in-time information on what various industry sectors what their needs are in terms of site requirements and infrastructure, as we strive to implement a coordinated effort across city, county, and state agencies. We know that Southeast Redmond is less connected by transit and also lacks employee amenities such as restaurants, so investing in transit, such as RedLink, helps with employee attraction and retention for those businesses. We're also working with many businesses who are at risk for business displacement and are in communication with them for their needs. Next slide. So these next two slides are some longer-term, big move items that have been identified. The strategy guide that's in the council packet has more details on the actions, including identifying the timeline, level of effort, as well as key partners needed for implementation. The strategy guide organizes actions into 4 categories: land use and zoning, business recruitment and retention, and then on the next slide, which we won't go to yet, but the other 2 categories are infrastructure and environment, as well as funding mechanisms. So those strategies all have actions underneath them in detail in that strategy guide in the packet. But to start with land use and zoning, one of the economic development plan's focus area was cluster diversification, and we know we need a healthy mix of footprints for business diversification and to support small businesses. Some of the actions in this study include use of incentive tools to get smaller footprints and flex space that is needed by some of our businesses experiencing displacement in other areas of Redmond. For business recruitment and retention, we know that time is money for both the business as well as the city. So some of the actions focus on educating and proactively planning around permit requirements and process. Now, of course, we will need to work closely with development services to understand funding and feasibility in implementing these actions. Next slide. Moving on to infrastructure and environment. To create site readiness for business attraction, we need to coordinate infrastructure demand with infrastructure partners, such as Puget Sound Energy, so we can provide timely power capacity that is required for advanced manufacturing. You just had a council report in June from Jenny Lieback on the grid capacity, and that information helps to inform some of this implementation as well. And then lastly, funding mechanisms. So we will explore funding tools and opportunities in partnership with our finance department, as well as potential public-private partnerships and/or acquiring city-owned property to lease at subsidized rents to local manufacturers and makers. We thank you for your time in listening to our report this evening. This study helped us with data analysis and engagement needed to make informed program and policy considerations. We're not asking for any council decisions today, and we'll come back for council feedback with continued program development and policy considerations. In fact, I'll be coming back on October 6th to give a comprehensive update on the midpoint review of our economic development strategic plan, in which this study was included. We are anticipating the docket items relating to industrial, manufacturing, and business park land use and zoning will be returning next summer. We are excited to get started on exploring implementation of some of these actions with our internal as well as external partners, but first want to see what questions you may have for us. And with that, I turn it back over to you, Mayor Bernie.
Thank you both so very much. Excellent sharing of all of that. Who has questions or comments? Council President.
Thank you so much to the team for your work on this and bringing it back for us tonight. We have not had a conversation, at least in these chambers, about this area in a minute, and I'm just so excited to see this back and for us to feel like we have some breadcrumbs to move forward with. It is really important that we diversify the economics of our city, and the findings of this report and the current conditions, including that this area has lost jobs a little bit faster than the rest of our city post-pandemic. This is a really, we're spending 10 minutes on it today, but it is really important. We're going to come back to it over and over and over again, and I just can't emphasize that enough. So really look forward to that when we do see you back for the Economic Development Plan midway point review. I'll be curious to hear, it wasn't referenced exactly in these materials or in this report, but I do know that we had been hoping to attract the life sciences to our city, and I'd love to hear more when you come back. And of course, I'm very eager to get going on the docket and to settle that other issue that we've previously put on the docket. I have a question about one of the business and recruitment and retention and talent creation strategies that was mentioned in the materials. I think it comes on page 22. It rates it as a very high need to explore funding to attract a vocational school to this area. And I hadn't heard us discuss that strategy before. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about, are those active conversations? questions, an idea that our consultants brought forward for us, or if you could just say a couple more words about that. Thanks.
Yeah, that's actually a strategy that's within our economic development strategic plan, the workforce chapter. That is one chapter where we haven't been able to jumpstart and spend a lot of time on that, mostly just due to staff capacity. But we're always open and have the welcome sign out for institution of higher education because it does bring funding with it. It brings jobs. It brings that talent and can spur off a lot of new business and opportunities. So the open sign and welcome sign is out there, and we're always interested in entertaining opportunities.
Thank you so much. I'll review the plan before we see you in October.
Thank you. Any other questions tonight? Councilmember Parkria, and then Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you so much for your presentation and for your work on this. My question is with a lot of the long-term actions as to what kind of internal communication is going on within the department when it comes to these far-reaching issues that we have discussed, including tonight, for example, with regards to drone ports, which were also previously zoned under the original IOC, I believe, to this area. I guess just, what kind of communication is going on to make sure that long-term items like these are being included in the long-term planning, zoning, redevelopment of this area?
I can take that. I'm proud to say that long-range planning and economic development work in lockstep on a lot of projects. So our economic development strategic plan was informed by Redmond 2050, and I was able to comment on the economic vitality chapter of Redmond 50. So it's kind of like a funnel where we're all kind of aligned with the various levels of planning processes that happen. So, and we continue to have active conversations, not only long range and economic development, but also current planning as well, to be in good communication on what the current environment is for businesses and for the city of Redmond, and be able to communicate and come up with creative solutions to try to address things if it can be addressed at a staff level with process improvement, or if it's something that needs to come back to you for more policy discussion and decisions.
Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer?
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you so much for this work. I'm also just will reflect what my colleague said of being very excited for the conversations ahead. Also want to appreciate the call out specifically of how this plan relates to the decisions and changes that we're going to see in the Marymore Village area. I've heard, especially during the time that I've been on council, a lot from the businesses in that area that either have been displaced or are concerned about upcoming displacement. And so thinking about how we create homes in the right places for those businesses, and specifically to address the affordability issues, I think is just a really key piece. So appreciate that, in addition to wanting to go and do some proactive attracting of businesses to come into Redmond, so we may both maintain those that are here and find the right places for them and get new. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions for staff tonight? Well, thank you both and everyone else has worked on this as well. Thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing more as we keep moving. Thank you. Our next item is the Ombuds report. I will first call on Councilmember Soni to see if there's any wrap-up from June, and then Councilmember Parsi for July.
There are no wrap-up from June.
Wonderful. Councilmember Parsi.
Yeah, we received a significant number of resident feedback about passing renter protection rights. So that was one of the main topics that we received feedback on. Sorry, one second. We received many feedback items about turning off ALPR systems. We heard from one resident who asked for having ALPR re-enabled. We heard from from someone who had housing construction concerns and requested information about how a certain building was allowed to be built. We heard some feedback about Recology and customer service with Recology, as well as public who was not able to find documents attached from our committee of the whole meeting. And we received also a question from the public about placing school supply donations in City Hall.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any other ombuds items for today? I see Councilmember Forsyth and then Council President Stewart.
Thank you. I had one conversation around the Everbridge email that went out about the heat advisory and some improvements we could make to those advisories so they don't look suspicious. I passed that information along to staff, and they already have acknowledged they're looking into it. Received contact and around the ALPR camera vote tonight. General conversation around the sign code that we approved tonight, and yard signs and the new code and the implications around that. Conversations with community members around the Drone as a First Responder program and around Derby Days.
Thanks. Other comments, Council President?
Yeah, first of all, I guess I'll start with Derby Days, where my colleague left off, just to say, hope everyone can come out and join us this weekend. You can meet us early for pancakes at the fire station, followed by the kids' bike parade at 10 o'clock, the main parade at 11, and then the Redmond City Council, as well as many of our commissioners, will be up on the front porch of City Hall to take your questions and engage in conversations. And then, of course, the big drone show at the end of the night. So we're looking forward to that. Hope you can make it. I also want to give a huge shout out to the staff and the teams involved in the wildly successful Meet Me at Marymore event last Sunday. It was so fun to experience that with 4,000 of our closest friends, and the day just really went off without a hitch, and really looking forward, and I know the rest of the council is too, to learning all about the impact of the World Cup investments as we get later into the year. A couple of other things on my behalf. I had the opportunity to be a judge in the Children's Business Fair put on by the Acorn Youth Festival last Saturday evening. Congratulations to all the young entrepreneurs. They did a fantastic job, and I really appreciate that event being held in Downtown Park so that all the folks enjoying the park could be customers of our wonderful young entrepreneurs. Many council members received postcards thanking us for our support of permanent supportive housing at Plymouth. And as previously mentioned, I did speak with the city managers at the Sound Cities Association about our interim official control currently and some of the questions that have been raised thus far. Did that a couple of weeks ago. And really had a lot of visitors at my office hours. I chatted with neighbors about public safety, service level concerns, affordability, interest in serving on boards and commissions, a couple of details about the Public Art Master Plan, and a park question that I was able to forward on to the staff. I also wanted to announce that the council has scheduled our next council conversation for Spirit Brook Park at 5 p.m. on September 10th. We will unfortunately not have the full benefit of having all 7 council members this time. That is a known entity as we head into the scheduling of this one. But we will look forward to having everyone there. It was also suggested that potentially we could invite school board members again for that one. So if there's interest on the council, I'm happy to extend an invitation, followed by a future date, probably in February, back at the Redmond Senior and Community Center. So thank you so much to those who've given their feedback and helped us keep those going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other ombuds items, Council Vice President, and then Councilmember Soni.
Thank you, Mayor. Keeping it as succinct as possible. Met with Zipline to discuss drone delivery in Redmond. Met with several constituents over Zoom to talk about their thoughts and concerns about drones in Redmond. Had 2 conversations about the community resource officers in Lake Washington school districts. The only concern there was inquiring as to if there were any significant changes from last year to this school year. had conversations about upcoming boards, commissions, and possible council seats. Again, wonderful seeing so much community that came out at Marymore. Looking forward to seeing everybody at Derby Days. Amending and just adding to what Council President had mentioned about Saturday's events. Also, don't forget, we do kick that off on Friday evening, both here at City Hall campus as well as over at the Jerry Baker Velodrome. And yesterday I had a phenomenal opportunity to tour Headworks with Cascade Water Alliance. One of my roles with Cascade is on the Resource Management Committee. And while we do have this very ambitious, exciting project of the Cascade Supply program that's going to be coming, we also have to maintain our current infrastructure and our responsibilities there. And I had the opportunity to tour with outgoing Joe McDonald, who has been taking care of things down there at Lake Taps for Cascade and has been doing a great job. So I was able to get a lot of legacy knowledge, and I'm really looking forward to having that information help me be that much more effective on Resource Management Committee.
Great, thanks. And so glad you got a tour by Joe, because he's a gem.
He is.
Yeah. Councilmember Soni?
First of all, what a phenomenal weekend with Meet Me at Marymore. Such a great event to bring all the community members outside in the sun. And congratulations, Spain, for taking trophy back home. I had a couple of meetings at the constituents related with the immigration challenges. People have been reaching out to me related that. There was one of the constituent who reached out for asking if there is any kind of a small business assistance and financial assistance. And there were a couple of questions related with the tenant protection, public safety, and the family of the victim person who was impacted with the auto pedestrian collision on the 83rd and 164th reached out to me to get some more information. And that was for the ombud.
Thank you. Any other ombuds for tonight? Councilmember Precria?
Just very quickly, I had the opportunity to get my tour of the MOC, the Maintenance and Operations Center. I was unfortunately the odd one left out due to OPMA rules 3 and 3, and then I got my tour. But other than that, I just had a number of conversations with the community, the majority of which continued to be about the tenant protections and the work of the subcommittee.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Kritzer?
I'll just keep it brief, since I think all the other ombuds reports before me covered a lot of the topics I've been in conversation with community on. So I'll just note that a lot of these topics have been popping up and have been engaging a lot with our community recently.
Thank you. Any other? And since it was mentioned, I just want to thank the community and our staff for not just the Meet Me at Marymore, which was phenomenal, and congrats to Spain, but also for all of the work around World Cup and the activities and our businesses stepping up, our community stepping up. It's just, it was really phenomenal for everyone to kind of join together and do really fun things and celebrate the area and the nations around the world. So it was just a fantastic experience. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And now we need something else to rally around, I think. So we'll have to find something coming up in the future. Are there any committee reports this evening? Councilmember Parsi and then Councilmember Kritzer.
ETP has some exciting updates for Redmond. So a few routes are going to be expanded. 269 is going to have added service to operate on weekends from Issaquah to Mercer Island Station, improving the span of operation later in the evenings. Route 255 is going to operate between 6 and 9 p.m., 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. on weekdays and 7 to 9 p.m. on weekends. And they're going to have expanded service with 30-minute peak service and 60-minute off-peak and weekend service times. I did share some feedback that I had heard from the community with King County Metro about reliability issues that the community shared about the buses and a couple more issues. So we will hopefully have some updates to share with the community about the unreliability of the buses.
Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you. I attended the One Redmond board meeting, and we had a really good, deep discussion about some of the focus of One Redmond's work. In particular, we talked about what to prioritize going forward and how we could drive forward some of the goals that I think our city shares with One Redmond as one of the partners in there, and in particular making good on the piece of work that One Redmond does as a contractor essentially for the city for economic development. So very relevant to actually the presentation that we heard of tonight. We had a lot of discussion about mechanisms for attracting businesses to Redmond and the role that One Redmond can play in that. And then we also, I also attended and chaired the Raya 8 Salmon Recovery Council meeting, which we had in Maple Valley at what is their city hall, which is beautiful. It has a beautiful view of a lake. It's amazing. So I'm a little bit jealous of their views, even though we also have a pretty great view from here. But it was really wonderful to be in person with our salmon recovery partners. One of the key actions we took was approving some funding to be able to work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and others at the locks to do a pilot program to put infused cold water at the locks to be able to address the overheating that makes it so that a lot of the salmon that come through the locks don't make it to the next stage of their migration. So kind of piloting an innovative new approach, and are going to see what the results of that are and whether we can scale that up. As many of you may know, we do counts at the locks every year and everyone gets excited, but then how many actually make it back into our waterways drop significantly, and part of that is because of the heat and some of the other conditions specifically in those waterways are right around there. So that's one area that we're looking at. And then I'll also note we got to go on a really cool tour of an active project that was funded by our collective dollars invested in salmon recovery, and got to see a lot of the really great floodplain reconnection work that's being done along the Cedar River.
Thank you. Committees, I'll go with Councilmember Soni, then Councilmember Prakria.
Thanks to Councilmember Parsi for covering ETP. I just wanted to add there was one more update. Metro staff has confirmed that in March 2027, Metro will implement the last phase of East Link connections, and it will include implementing Route 251, which will connect Southeast Redmond and downtown Redmond to Woodinville via Education Hill. This route was originally planned to be implemented in spring 2026, and it's not going to finally happen. And ETP is not going to meet in August, so there will be a joint transportation board meeting planned for September. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Prakria?
Thank you. And actually, that's just wonderful to hear about the expansion of the 255 and this new route and the salmon innovation. So thank you for sharing. I just have a few really quick updates from committees. First, a summary of the work of the Tenant Protection Subcommittee, of which I am chair. So we had a meeting on July 8th with a number of advocates. We continue to meet with advocates and landlords, and we incorporated their feedback into the presentation that we gave to council on July 14th, me and my colleagues, where we got further direction to continue our work from our colleagues on council. So that's the update of that. With the Public Safety and Human Services Committee of the Whole, of which I'm chair, we moved 2 items to consent for future meetings. We moved the King County Development Block Grant Funding Allocation Plan to consent on the September 1st business meeting, as well as the LWSD 26 to 27 Community Resource Officer CRO contract agreement renewal to consent on the next business meeting on August 3rd. I also had the opportunity to go to the July 8th Sound Cities Association PIC meeting as the alternate to Council President Stewart. Unfortunately, I only had the chance to make the last half of the meeting, so I will let her give the updates from that.
Thank you. Councilmember Forsyth?
Thank you. I attended the East Trail Planning Committee meeting, and where we continue to discuss the wayfinding opportunities that we should be seeing in October and how those relate to what cities are doing and how they should tie in seamlessly. Also pushed for more visual acuity and ADA protections on those signs to make sure that we are really ensuring that they are readable for those with a low visual acuity that are using our trail system by expanding the color palettes. The quarterly East Trail meeting will be this Friday, or I'm sorry, next Friday at 10 a.m., and it will be an in-person meeting at Jean Coulon Park. So if anyone would like to attend and see that meeting, the in-person meetings are generally pretty fun. That is, again, 10 a.m. Friday, July 31st at Jean Coulon Park. And if we're looking for something else to rally around right now, I would suggest we embrace our regional and national treasure, Jimothy, until we find something new.
Oh, Jimothy. He's way over in Ballard, but let us celebrate that adorable creature. Councilmember Nueva Commander, did you have any committee reports this evening?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, and then I'll go to Council President Stewart. Thank you.
Great. Three quick ones here. First, from the Public Issues Committee of the Sound Cities Association, where I serve as the vice chair, one of our best meetings ever, and in part because we spent some time working in small cohorts to make sure that we could really make sure that every voice in the room was heard, and we were able to come up with some feedback to give to our Sound Cities representatives who are serving on I'm going to call it task force subcommittee to help inform the county's possible affordable housing levy. So I've previously shared with the council the one-pager that staff helped us create about some of the questions Redmond might have for a housing levy. Mayor Bernie is a representative for the Sound Cities Association on this task force that we were making recommendations to. I'll just say briefly from the Sound Cities Association and the Public Issues Committee, a lot of appreciation for regional authority. We have investment mechanisms in sub-regions that are well-known, well-established, and should be regarded as experts in their regions. And that is something that the Public Issues Committee is interested in seeing be carried through, as well as attention to the needs for infrastructure. Again, it's not our choice whether or not a recommendation for a levy is made, but if one is going to be made, these are some of the considerations that will be moving forward. Also to have really clear plans for how money would be spent before it's raised. That's in contrast to one of the other topics we had for consideration that night, which was the implementation plan for the mid-levy, which is now known as the bridge. So that's one that voters approved a while back, and we are just now making an implementation plan for it. Kind of would like to see that order be reversed in this case. So really, really good conversation. We also approved the solid waste rate letter to be sent to King County. I'm on the Public Issues Nominating Committee and wanted to let folks know that in late September, the applications for regional boards and committees will open. We're doing a little bit of work right now to make sure that we're making some process improvements to help candidates and applicants be really successful in their endeavor. And council leadership has scheduled a conversation for our council at a study session in October to discuss Redmond's priorities for those applications and make sure that we're able to submit them on time. And finally, I'm doing some work with the AWC Legislative Priorities Committee. We meet again tomorrow to continue to refine our priorities, particularly around fiscal responsibility. One of the things that is becoming something that is sticking to the page and you likely will not see move from the page is, of course, that kind of mid-tier request of the legislature to make sure that the $200 million fund that was established during the millionaire's tax actually be funded to support cities to help backfill from the loss of the sales tax revenue. So a lot more short-term things. That's kind of like the midterm thing, and I'm happy to discuss that with any of you. I've also been meeting with members of our delegation to get their feedback on a couple of strategies and have debriefed with Mayor Bernie on a couple of those too. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer?
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot about one committee. I didn't give my report on the Finance Administration Communications Committee. Just a couple notes. Some things were on our agenda tonight. I'll note ones that are coming up for August 3rd. We discussed doing a pre-membership in the Washington City's Insurance Authority as a new option for insurance for the city. We also had an update around business technology improvement projects. And we had the introduction of our new Respect, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Program Manager. Excited about the work ahead there. And then we also discussed with our city communications team about their strategies going forward for citywide communications. And had a visit from folks that work on regional animal licensing services to be able to talk about potential fee changes, but also just learned that a lot of people, although you're supposed to get licenses, don't have them. So they're trying to think about how they increase license adoption. So those were a couple things. And then I also wanted one more update that I'll note from the RIA 8 meeting is that I had the honor of being able to recognize at the RIA 8 meeting one of our staff who is retiring after more than 25 years serving the city of Redmond, Peter Holt, who I've had the real honor of being able to work with in my work on salmon recovery, representing the city. And just want to say thanks here on the record as well to Peter for his service. He's been there really since the beginning of the work on regional salmon recovery and made just a huge difference for the health of our watershed. So thank you, Peter.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning him. He's been a phenomenal employee in the city of Redmond, and very happy for him that he is retiring. Very sad to see him go. But I'm glad he was able to be honored with the RIA 8. Any other committee reports this evening? All right, we do not have any unfinished business. We do, however, have new business. The next item on the agenda is new business AM number 26119, council vote to end Flock ALPR contract. And Council President, do you have a motion to read?
I do. I move for the city to terminate its contract with Flock for the automated license plate readers in Redmond.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, Council President?
There we go. Thank you so much, Mayor Bernie. 2 years ago, this conversation started in council chambers. Staff had applied for a state grant to bring the license plate readers to Redmond. And before council agreed to accept those dollars, we worked with the department to create policy guardrails that would protect the data of Redmond residents. Because of those guardrails, we do not believe that Redmond's automatic license plate reader data has ever been accessed by the federal government or other agencies. And in November of last year, council voted to pause the automatic license plate reader program while we reviewed the contract. The program has been paused since that time. Some of the most significant conversations about this program took place at the March 10th and May 26th study sessions this spring, the latter being a final review of financial implications for closing out this contract. As was stated in May, the closure of this contract tonight does not create any additional financial obligation for the city, and like many other cities who've taken similar measures, the state is not asking the city to return any of the grant dollars used to implement the program. Council, by my estimation, has completed our due diligence and gave direction last week to schedule this action. I personally will be supporting this action tonight and would like to thank everyone for their patience. I'm grateful to each and every community member who took the time, especially those who had never shared feedback before, but came out to share their perspective with the council and myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Member Forsyth.
Thank you. I am also excited to take this vote tonight. As many of you will recall, I had a lot of trepidations about this program to begin with, and I'm grateful to all of you for working with me and slowing down the conversation and making sure that we had those guardrails in place around data privacy, and that ensured that our data was not breached. But I still have the same concerns that I shared 2 years ago, and I look forward to voting to remove this program, and especially having heard from so many of our community members, and also understanding that there are a lot of community members who do not feel comfortable coming forward and sharing their views on this program around the removal for fear of potential retaliation from outside agencies. So I look forward to taking this vote tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Prakria?
I just wanted to say and give context that at the May 26th study session, I had expressed interest in exploring options like amending the terms of the contract to add poison pill language with the current suspension of our cameras and the passage of SB 6002 in our state legislature. And with the vote that we have before us, I am solidly in favor of terminating the current contract. We have heard an outpouring from our community. I have personally heard from folks who are not in the least bit civically engaged, that they are fearful of these cameras. And if it's causing, I believe that, the community feels that these cameras are a threat, and I will be voting to terminate the contract.
Any other comments this evening? Seeing none, I think let's take a voice vote. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries 7-0. Thank you so much. Thank you for your due diligence on this topic. The last item on the agenda is a closed session for labor negotiations, RCW 4230-144B. Without objection, the business meeting will adjourn at this time and council will go to closed session. Hearing none, the business meeting is adjourned. Per state law, public attendance is not allowed in the closed session. Closed session participants, we don't have any, please leave this meeting, join the closed session in the other room. Thank you.